Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. You can see who I'm here with. They're no strangers to the channel. 3 Point Weekly, my guys, Devin from Run the NBA, Reek of Reek Knows Hoops, and Gabe, also known as GabeSlidIn. How you guys doing?
Man, so it's been quite some time. Been in the tournaments, but as far as long form content, man, it's kind of a reunion.
Yes, sir.
Facts.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good episode. I'm glad that we can all collab on this. And as you guys can probably tell by the title, the thumbnail, the trade deadline obviously just happened, and so this episode is going to be focusing mostly on the trades that just happened. I know I talked maybe a little bit about some of the rumors beforehand, but I haven't really given like an analysis of some of the trades that have happened. So I feel like we'll talk about a lot of the major ones and then anything else we want to add later on. But where better to start than with the biggest one, probably of them all, that was just about a week ago, and that is, the Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis trade. Obviously Mavericks fans are very upset with Nico Harrison, and it's not even necessarily because like the players they got back that you're not a fan of, but it's like they traded Luka Doncic. No one could have seen this coming. So I'll let you guys go first. Like, what happened with this trade, and what do you guys make of this trade?
It's crazy because I still cannot believe that this trade happened. Like, you don't trade a 25-year-old perennial All NBA first team guy.
Yeah,
like it still just does not make sense to me on that side. And the more Nico Harrison talked, the more confused I got on why they even decided to do the trade. He should have just shut his mouth honestly and just said, you know what, I messed up. Like he should have just done that honestly. But I mean, for the Lakers, they got their next guy, which is something that was kind of unforeseen because we all kind of collectively knew that after LeBron retired that they were going to be in kind of a rut, it seemed like. But this is them really buying into, I would say, their future more so than the present. And, I mean, if you can get Luka Doncic, you're going to get Luka Doncic. I don't care who you have to give up. And the trade package they gave up, it wasn't really that, as much as I thought Luka Doncic would be worth on the open market. So it just makes Dallas look worse. But shout out to Rob Pelinka. I don't say that often, but he had a hell of a trade deadline too. I know we'll talk about some more moves that they made, but he did his thing for sure.
Man, as far as just like putting this trade into context, this is kind of how my story played out with this. So I was in Indianapolis that day. I was at the WWE Royal Rumble, right? And the end of that show was a bit shocking. I think the guy that ended up winning that Royal Rumble event was very unexpected. And afterwards, me and my guys, we went to a Denny's. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a Denny's, but that's quite the experience in and of itself. And I'm sitting here at a Denny's booth, and across the table, one of my guys goes, Luka Doncic just got traded to the Lakers? And in my head, I'm like, why are you telling me right now? Like, we haven't even been talking about basketball. Like, we aren't even, like, in a basketball game. Like, what are we doing? My phone was dead. I couldn't check my phone at all. And they just keep going on about this, and I'm like, dude, you guys are lying. The people at the booths around us are like, you guys saw that too? Like, that makes no sense. And it's like, I'm sitting here in a public setting, and everybody with any sort of indication is like, this has to be fake. Shams thought he got hacked. I mean, the public thought he got hacked. It just, stuff like that doesn't happen. Like, it's literally the probably craziest deal in history.
Mm-hmm.
I think, this might just be the universe resetting itself from the Chris Paul trade getting blocked. It's like now they just have something so outlandish happen. It was hard to even react to. Like the fact that, and I think somebody said it best when they said they have people thinking that Anthony Davis is Andre Drummond, the way that Dallas is reacting, and definitely a shock.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a similar scenario. I mean, I woke up, buddy texted me, and all he said was Luka to the Lakers, and I was like, "The hell are you talking about, man?" And sure enough, just absurd. I mean, malpractice on a lot of facets from how Nico Harrison and the Mavs front office handled this. Like we've mentioned, I mean, trading somewhat of Luka's caliber as he's entering his prime is just unheard of unless there's some very, very extreme extenuating circumstances, which apparently Nico Harrison thinks there is. There isn't, as far as I'm concerned. The biggest problem is if you genuinely think this is a concern and you're in supposed win now mode, which apparently doesn't involve the guy who just brought you to the finals, how do you only contact one other team? Like, the fact that this isn't a league-wide shop, how much value can we get for Luka if we truly think he isn't our guy? Which is an absurd statement to think, but if that's truly how you feel, how do you not entertain the other 28, 29 teams in the league and see what can we actually get for this guy? Because although AD in any package is not nothing, for Luka Doncic, it's sure as hell not enough for what you should be getting. So, I mean, like you said, Reek, the biggest concern for the Lakers going forward was what did they look like post 80 LeBron era? They kind of figured that one out because Nico Harrison just decided to give them Luka. So kudos to Pelinka, like you said. The fact that he just kept it quiet is honestly the biggest thing that they give kudos for, because as soon as this leaks, if it happens before the trade, this doesn't happen. The fact that they did so is ultimately the biggest thing here.
I think the craziest thing was that Danny Ainge didn't know either, and he was involved in the deal. Like, if Danny Ainge knew, he was not helping facilitate that trade at all. So
no.
And I mean, we know how like he usually has like the biggest, like he's one of the biggest wizards when it comes to like getting draft picks and like just knowing the ins and outs of every trade. So the fact that he was even bamboozled is like, bro.
Yeah.
There's
just I don't think there's any sense that can be made of it, as far as you look at, like he said, we do it as a win now move. Like, my brother, you were in the NBA finals. There is not much more winning you can do. The only thing you can do more than winning 3 playoff series is winning a ring. And you got rid of your best player. And it's of course not a future move. You got rid of a 25-year-old who is likely not even in his prime yet. Yeah. And so you look at, like, are you doing this for the present? Well, why would you shake up a finals team that was, for all intents and purposes, still quite good? And for the future, why are you trading for a 31-year-old who's probably past his peak? So it's really hard to even dissect on any sort of logistical level. Like, they can talk about the defense as much as they want, but I mean, at the end of the day, you can say defense wins championships, but getting to the finals is pretty dang close.
Yeah. And I know like Luka's defense in the final, it was bad. He was getting picked on really bad, but so wasn't Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving was getting picked on too. Mm-hmm. And also their shooters, they didn't shoot well. Like, Luka was doing a lot offensively for them. Basically was their offense in that NBA finals. And he was not getting much help from even his co-star on Kyrie Irving. So, you can look at a bunch of factors on why they lost that finals. Luka's defense was a part of it, but it's not the sole reason. And I think that they could still make deep playoff runs with Luka being a bad defender. And for actually most of the playoffs, he was actually for his standards. So it just seems much deeper than Luka's out of shape and he's a bad defender to me. Like, it's a lot more than that, which maybe that news will come out someday, maybe it won't. But Dallas, they shot themselves in the foot, and this team is not bad. Like, it's not badly constructed. I like the team still, but they're not a championship team in my opinion. I can't see them getting past OKC. I can't see them beating Denver. So it might seem good in Nico's eyes. Like, I feel like we still got better. We got Anthony Davis, who's still an amazing top 10 player. But, in the grand scheme of things, I think you limited your ceiling now, and you definitely limited your ceiling for the next, 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yeah, I feel like, too, when he said it's like a win now move, or like their win now mindset, it's like the only thing you could maybe even argue is that it's better for this season just because Luka's missed so much time, and Anthony Davis, while he has those, times where he might miss games and stuff like that, especially like even in the playoffs, we've seen it, but like just this season in particular is like the only thing, if that's why I said and I mean, shout out to, Mo or Maurice, the sports historian, because we were talking about this too, because he was saying, it's literally, it makes no sense. And he said, dude, if they don't win the championship this year, it's just going to keep looking worse, every single year. And I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen, because, more and more, every year the Lakers are going to look more and more promising in the Luka era, because I mean, like you said, Reek, like they got a player now. Like everyone thought, like if LeBron and AD like rode into the sunset on this Lakers team and then just retired there or whatever, they were going to be horrible. Those picks in like 2030, 2031 were going to be like some of the most valuable picks we've ever seen, like, you know, sought after in the trade market or something. So the fact that they got a guy like Luka now, and like, I don't know, it just really makes no sense. And it's just so frustrating because like I listened to the press conference too with like Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd, and like not to disrespect, but like Nico Harrison just does not seem smart at all. Like just from listening to him talk, he just doesn't seem like an intelligent person. He seems like he was definitely lacking, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it boosts them a little bit this season just because of Luka's injuries like that he's had, but what other upside really is there to this? I don't think there is one really.
There's not.
No.
Hey,
Yeah,
there's
a little bit better defensively in the short term, and now you're relying on Spencer Dinwiddie to be good every night.
And Kyrie to be
That's,
consistent, and that's another thing we were
Yeah,
talking
Kyrie
about. Like,
has to be the guy, and
Yeah.
Dinwiddie is now perimeter creator number 2, which one night every week or week and a half is probably reliable. Outside of that, not something I'd want to have to rely on if I think I'm in win now mode.
them new owners, man. They might be moving these boys to Vegas, building that casino on site. It's this might be step one of the grander plan, man. I think Silver might have made the call to get them ratings up.
That's what some
That
people
is
are
what it
saying.
seemed like. It kind of does seem like that, especially with them flexing a Saturday game. They're just interrupting like college basketball schedule and stuff. Like it's interesting, and the fact that it's the Lakers makes that more interesting. But nonetheless, back to Nico Harrison, I do agree with what you said there, Garrett. Like it just seems like he thinks he's like the smartest guy in the room, and everybody else is stupid. Like that's kind of how that press conference came off to me.
Yeah.
And just looking at Jason Kidd's like face throughout it, he's like, who the hell am I like working with? Like who is overseeing the franchise, the team that I'm trying to coach every single night? Like I wouldn't have blamed Jason Kidd if he put in his letter of resignation like the day after that trade came out, man. I would have probably done that, to be honest.
Yeah, there were even times too, like it's funny because after that happened, I watched this like video of this like body language expert, and she was analyzing like Jason Kidd throughout that whole press conference and stuff, and she even pointed out things that like would be very hard to see, like when it's like someone has their tongue like this, like you know what I mean, like in their cheek, and like he was doing things like that, and it's like those are usually signs of like, you know, like unsettledness, you know what I mean, like especially when you have like the facial expressions that he was having. So it's like there was just so much to read there. Like you could tell it. I don't think Jason Kidd was happy. So
I can't wait for them to play each other. I hope somehow it gets to the point where it's like either a play-in game or even a playoff series. Maybe if the Mavericks can jump up the standings a little bit, might be like a 4-5 matchup. That would be must-see.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
But yeah, if you guys want, we can keep it pushing here. Move on to the next big deal, which revolves around the San Antonio Spurs acquiring De'Aaron Fox. You know, the Sacramento Kings acquired Zach LaVine, a lot of draft compensation as well, and the Chicago Bulls get more trash. What do you guys make of this trade?
They're done, man.
Who's done? I think I know who you're talking about.
The formerly known as Cincinnati Royals, man. If there's one thing I know about Cincinnati sports, it's it just never goes well, and that you can see here that you can take the team out of Cincinnati, but you can't take Cincinnati out of the team. that's just going to be my opening piece on the Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for them. I mean, I get where their mindset is. Clearly, they've stated that they want to remain competitive. And given where they were at for the previous nearly 2 decades, I get it. And I think this does that to an extent, in that Monk moves to the 1. You get your scoring replacement in LaVine. But, I mean, are they going to do anything then at best make the plan and maybe they can hope to get in? Probably not. Now, again, if you're Sacramento, that might be what you want right now. And honestly, I can't blame them, because the last thing they might want to do is just focus on the future, get draft picks, and then fluke their draft picks a bunch again. So I get it, considering what that franchise has gone through. But I mean, that you throw in the JV trade, of course, which we might discuss to some extent. But I mean, they're saying we want to score the basketball and we want to be competitive. And we are not saying anything about our future, and we are not saying anything about wanting to remotely play defense. So don't expect any defense if you're a Sacramento fan for the next little while. But it's interesting. I mean, on the Spurs standpoint, they didn't have to give up any of their core pieces. You only give up one of your own first round picks. I mean, this makes sense, because otherwise, if it's a guy that seemingly wanted to go to San Antonio anyways in a year and a half, giving up a ton of extra assets to acquire him now while Wemby is nowhere near his prime yet anyways, doesn't really make sense. But for this package, makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, Garrett, Chicago, I mean, at least they don't have LaVine's contract anymore. And in theory, they would have fully been embracing the tank if they got rid of Vucevic as well. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But Spurs at least made out well here. Everyone else, it's kind of a bit stinky.
Yeah, that's kind of the best way to describe it. Just back to like the trade package, that's kind of what surprised me the most. I was expecting to see Vassell or Castle in that deal in some capacity, but the fact that you kept both of them, you even kept Keldon Johnson, like the core is there. You didn't give up anybody that's really tangible. Like Trey Jones is fine, but I mean, if you're getting De'Aaron Fox, Chris Paul slides to that backup point guard role, so it's perfect, man. So San Antonio pulled off a masterclass. Like this would have been the best trade at the deadline if the Lakers didn't get Luka, but getting De'Aaron Fox at this stage in his career, I think it's perfect, because Wemby is showing like how much he impacts winning already, and just giving him a running mate that I think they can still grow together and everything. Very good move for the short term and for more of the future as well. So San Antonio kind of fleeced in my opinion. As for the Kings, I guess if they just want to stay like you said, Devin, like a playing team, if that's what y'all want, hey, I'm not mad at y'all. Go ahead, do what you want to do. But I was a little surprised, like they decided to take LaVine back. Like that kind of shocked me. But if that's kind of the direction that they want to go, is just score 1 million points and give up 1 million points, and be a playing team, I guess that's fine, because that is a franchise that was in the gutter for like 15 plus seasons. So they just probably like any type of winning that they can get.
They just get like weird obsessions with players. Like they had this, I remember, I think it was Buddy Hield like years ago. Like after he got drafted, like they thought that he was going to be like the next Kobe. So they were just like all over him for so long until they finally got him. And I think it was like, had to be at least like 4 or 5 years ago when Zach LaVine, I think, was a restricted free agent, and they offered him so much money. And then he stayed on the Bulls, and they're like, hey, I don't care how long it's been. We wanted him, and we got him. And just the fact that, like, and I know Sabonis is, better than Vooch, but still, like, you put DeMar and Zach, who were leading a mid-Bulls team, a Bulls team that usually was, like, bordering on even making the playoffs, and just doing that in the West, like, you're talking about we want to stay competitive. Right now, they're the 10 seed, right? And the Warriors added a star. I don't know how much that'll change things. We'll get into that later. The Spurs added a star. They're below them. And then, below that's like Jazz and Pelicans, who still not going anywhere. But all that to say, like, how much are you really moving up at the end of the day, like making that trade? So, I mean, for them, it's just like, I don't know. It's putting them back to almost those DeMarcus Cousins days where they were like okay enough to not get better, but also okay enough to not compete. And so it's kind of just back to the status quo, I guess, for them, where they're never going to really get a great pick, but they're also never going to be competitive as long as they have these guys around. On the other end, though, for San Antonio, I mean, I think it's going to be a great fit. I know some people were a little critical as far as like Fox not being the greatest shooter in the world, but just the rim pressure that he provides on that team, especially with the fact that, Wemby can space the floor very well. It's not a situation where you're going to have like the paint clogged by any stretch. I think they can run a pick and roll effectively. They can run a pick and pop effectively. But then, like you guys mentioned, not being able to give up those other core pieces means that, they just have so many options to work with as far as working things out, building that chemistry up. Kind of that point as well about like how he may have gone there in the future anyways. I think always of like the Carmelo Anthony to the Knicks deal where they just gave up so much when he was going to go there regardless, and being able to get him now but not give up too much, so that way once Wemby starts to enter that prime, they built up enough chemistry to where they can really just work well together. I think this was a great time to just strike that deal and a great time to get things started.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just I hate the trade for the Bulls, and I say that just because like, last year obviously it's like, oh well, LaVine can only be moved if you attach a first round pick and stuff like that, which is already just dumb in my opinion. I feel like it was just dumb that was like even the rumors. Like I know he hadn't had a great year, but it's like if that's the case, like just to unload him, it's not like he was an inefficient player or anything like that. But it's like this season he really, I think, did step it up a bit. Actually, too, I would say like when DeMar like a few years ago went on that run of like longest streak of like 30-point games since by a Bulls player since Jordan, like LaVine basically duplicated that this season, and he was just doing that like about a month ago too. So like I feel like he had really started showing like higher signs, and the fact that like all we could get back for him was Zach Collins and Kevin Herter, who will probably be like short-lived Chicago Bulls, Trey Jones, who, I mean, cool, like probably the best player we got out of this, like long-term, but that's like the 7th point guard on the team. And then you got a pick back that we were already supposed to get because it really was a top 10 protected pick. It was supposed to convey to us. Right now we're like the 8th worst team in the league record-wise. So like now it's just a guarantee that we're getting that pick. So what does that tell me? It tells me like maybe we're going to try and fight for this like last play-in spot and probably miss it. So it's like what even gives, you know what I mean? Like it's just bad. Obviously the Spurs, like you guys said, like didn't have to give up really too much to get Fox. I will say this. I mean, if the rumors were all true, because I know De'Aaron Fox kind of like denied that he ever really was against like being in Sacramento like long term and stuff like that. I know like him and Monk kind of, there was like a little thing going on there, but like I do think if that is the case, you get a guy like LaVine and 3 first-round picks and a lot of second-round picks. That's not a bad return, I would say, for a guy who, if he didn't actually want to be there, especially because this summer or something like that, if they decide like, okay, change things up again, move DeMar or you move LaVine again or something like that, then possibly. But I don't know. I think the fact that they got so many picks back, and especially like that Hornets one, I think, it'll be. I think it's not a bad trade for them. It could have been a lot worse, but the worst end of it is our end of it, the Chicago end of it. So
yeah, the Chicago end of it is definitely the worst. The only contingency I'll say on those Kings picks is they look a lot better than they do because you get 3, but one of them is the Hornets one. That's either lottery or top 10 protected. Either way, they're not getting it. That converts into, I believe, a 2026 and a 2027 second-round pick. Mm-hmm. So they'll be early-ish seconds probably because Hornets, but it's not going to be an early first. Spurs first in a couple of years, probably not a great pick. The way that Fox probably going to be on the team. Obviously, Wemby's going to be doing his thing. So they're at least a playoff team at that point. Timberwolves 2031 pick. I mean, that's so far out in the future. Who knows? They could still have Anthony Edwards, and they might have a running mate with them, and they could be good. Anthony Edwards might be gone, and they might be terrible at that point. It's hard to say. But at least those Hornets and Spurs first-round picks, they're a little bit better looking than they actually are. So it's still something, but it doesn't look as good as it does on the surface.
Yeah, it is just a lot of, I mean, obviously this is a front office who, like, where Gabe said, like, you can take the team out of Cincinnati, but you can't take Cincinnati out of the team. This is a team who really hasn't had too much draft success. But, I mean, you get so many opportunities, you're bound to maybe hit on 1 or 2. So we'll just have to see, I guess, how that goes. But if you guys want, we can, I guess, keep it pushing here, move on to the next trade, talk about the Milwaukee Bucks deciding to move on from Chris Middleton after he's been there since 2013. Is, obviously was a key part in them winning the 2021 NBA championship, and they traded him to get back Kyle Kuzma. They also get back Jericho Sims. They also sent out A.J. Johnson, who had a really good game actually the other day for the Wizards. And then in that trade also it sends DeLon Wright to the Knicks, and I believe Patrick Baldwin to the Spurs, because I think it actually turned into like a 4-team trade. But obviously, like, the main part of it with Middleton, Kyle Kuzma, and some of those picks moved around. What do you guys make of this deal? Does it actually make the Bucks more of a contending team? Do you like the deal for the Wizards? What do we think?
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
It's genuinely just a weird one, was my initial thought when I saw this. It's a shame that Middleton has to be in Washington. As much as obviously
Wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where I get why they moved off of him, given all of the injury concerns he's had. And even still, with there being concerns of how good he's going to be on the court, he's still played relatively well for them in the postseason the last couple of years when he could play. Problem is, of course, he's just not playing that much. So I get why they move off of him, especially when you consider the fact that they're getting back a piece that, in theory, has proved that he can be another 3 option on a playoff team. Now, that's quite a while ago, and his play style has very much changed since then. Part of that due to necessity, based on the fact that obviously Washington need him to be more of a primary guy, but can he go back to being that more of a role player type guy next to Giannis and next to Dame? That's going to be one of the big things that's going to decide how Milwaukee do. The biggest thing that makes this more intriguing for them this year than in past years is just the fact that Brook Lopez is not anywhere near what he's been the last few years, which, I mean, but he's past 35 now. That's just to be expected. So this now does give them someone who can actually play the 4. So if they want to have some lineups where Giannis runs the 5, they have a little bit more flexibility there. Maybe that helps them defensively, but it's just a weird one. It is ultimately what I continue to come back to. I think it gives them a little bit more versatility in terms of their lineups, in terms of being able to have Giannis used in different ways, but I don't think it's some significantly altering move for them. Ultimately, only other point I have on this, please retire Chris Middleton's jersey. I'm sure it will be, but very much deserved, and definitely a well-deserved Buck legend for all his contributions.
Yeah.
He's probably like a top 5 Bucks player ever, like, to be honest, just for helping them win that championship and how good he was in that finals too. Like, I think he had a 40-point game in that finals in a pivotal game, if I'm not mistaken, too. So it sucks he has to go to Washington. This trade, like Devin said, confusing. Like, when I saw the notification, I was like, that's kind of their big swing, which I'm sure they just felt like they had to make some type of move. And I understand moving off of Chris Middleton because he just has not been the same player. The injuries have just continued to pile up on him. They need somebody that's going to be available. But the thing with Kyle Kuzma that just worries me, he just hasn't played winning basketball in so long. And I think those habits are kind of difficult to shake midseason. So the fact that, he's going to a team that has aspirations to, win a championship this season with Dame and Giannis. And it's going to be tough for him. Hopefully he can do it and kind of get back to that, a role that we've seen him play in the past. But it's been a while, like you said, Devin, since we've seen him in that role. So that worries me a little bit. And also, like, moving off of A.J. Johnson, I mean, we knew that he was a project pick when they drafted him. And they just gave up on him, halfway through his rookie year when he showed some signs, here and there. But, if all else fails, at least you want to have some young guys on your team that you can look forward to if the doomsday comes where Giannis requests out or something. But now they don't really have that. They're a very old team. It doesn't move the needle to me at all in the Eastern Conference. Like, it's a swing that they felt necessary. But if it works out, I still don't think, like, it really pushes them into that upper echelon of contenders, in my opinion.
I mean, I think it was a good trade overall. Like, even if not significantly, I do think they got better off of it, especially Kuzma's kind of been on a down year this year. But with that said, like, the past couple of years, I think he raised his stock so much that his value is probably at an all-time high, like last offseason. So the fact that he kind of came in this season, had a little bit of a downturn, and they were able to get him for maybe a little bit less, I think they probably bought low. So I think that was kind of good on their end. The thing with Middleton, it was kind of bound to happen just with the availability. You guys kind of already touched on that. And I don't think as far as them getting back to contention, he was going to be the piece to do that. Like you mentioned with the habits, I know Kuzma's kind of been off the Lakers for quite some time now, but him being next to a, ball dominant LeBron and then, a star forward and AD just to go on that championship run. Hopefully he can maybe channel some of that through being next to, a Damian Lillard and a Giannis in this situation. Does this make them the premier team? No, it doesn't. But just being able to buy low on a player who's shown really good things the past couple of years, I think at least gives you a shot.
Yeah, it's funny because you guys all said like the points I was gonna make. That's why I was smiling right there when Gabe was saying that, because I do agree with you, Gabe. I think that like it's not a huge move. It doesn't like totally turn the tides, but I think it does make them a little better, and I think it was overdue. It made sense like waiting for so long like with Middleton, just because it's like he was so big like when they won the championship, and that's probably honestly like one of the biggest what ifs that doesn't get talked about of this decade is like, what if he didn't get hurt the next year? They might have went back to back, like it was very possible. So I mean, I definitely think like it does improve them a little bit. I don't know if it really puts them in the class of like the Bostons or the Clevelands or the New Yorks necessarily, who are really the top three most of the year. Like you were saying too, Reek, I think that, he was, though a player like Chris Middleton, like come playoff time, if he were healthy, would definitely be huge to have, just because he's pretty much always elevated in the playoffs. We even saw it last year when he was injured most of the year against Indiana, and then when Giannis was hurt against Miami. And I know we mentioned the finals, but like even like that Atlanta series, like when they won the championship, like Giannis was hurt like at that time. Like I think some people actually thought at one point like the Atlanta Hawks were going to the finals just because like, oh, Giannis is out, like they might be done. But Chris Middleton went crazy and Brook Lopez went crazy, and I guess that kind of brings me to like what you said, Devin. It's like this team is just, I don't know, like they seem like they have to make moves, like they just are a little bit like desperate at this point. It seems like their championship window just keeps getting, like, I guess, smaller and smaller. They are one of, if not the oldest team in the league right now. So it's like they really, don't have a lot of room to mess with necessarily. And you do add another guy like Kuzma, who was big in a championship run in the bubble year. But I think it's just going to be really tough, because it's like making the transition to playing the Washington, like, trash basketball like type of mindset for so long. It's like, can you carry that over mid-season and instantly have an impact for the Bucks? And I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's an aging team that continues to try to keep their superstar happy to keep him in town, and they haven't even necessarily done a bad job of it. I mean, this offseason, considering they had no flexibility, the fact that you were able to get a Taurean Prince, like Gary Trent, I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get. Getting a guy who's still a pretty good player for Chris Middleton, who's been relatively unavailable and in turn unproductive for the last couple of years. It's good moves in isolation. It's just, is it enough? And given the fact that you're trying to compete every year whilst having Giannis, it's a tall task, and it just might not be enough. But it's not inherently bad moves that they're making, and this in turn isn't a bad trade either. It's just, like we all say, it's probably not quite enough.
I would have never thought that the Giannis and Dame era would be where it is now. Like when that trade happened, I think we all kind of thought like that was like a real needle moving type of trade, and it just hasn't been that for other factors. Injuries has been the main thing that has plagued this team. Coaching turmoil has kind of plagued this team. It's just been a weird 2 years, man. But they've had really good moments this season, which is, pretty impressive, because they started out so bad. And the fact that they are even where they are now to give themselves kind of a puncher's chance is still impressive. But it's still a tall mountain to climb, man, because those top three teams out east are really good. And some of them are, starting to ascend right now. So, the Bucks, we'll see how Kyle Kuzma plays. Hopefully he can get back to some Laker-style basketball, or at least how he was playing in Washington the last couple of seasons before this one.
Yeah. Well, in turn, it did move the needle for you guys, like one way or another, because it opened the way for you guys to get Holiday after that. But yeah, I don't know. If you guys want, we can, I guess, keep it pushing here. Talk about the trade that involved the most teams. The big one that was talked about the most. It seems like for a month plus now, like ever since Christmas Day, when we got report that like he was basically requesting a trade. Jimmy Butler finally leaves the Miami Heat, going to the Warriors, along with a couple picks, and then the Miami Heat receive Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, Kyle Anderson, and a 2025 protected first-round pick. There were other teams involved in it as well, like the Jazz, the Pistons, the Raptors. A little bit of draft compensation in second round. I know the Jazz got like KJ Martin. The Pistons get Dennis Schroeder, probably some of the other notable acquisitions. But, I mean, mostly with this Warriors-Heat exchange, what do you guys make of this? And, I mean, now Jimmy Butler teammates with Gabe's favorite player, Curry.
Man, this team ain't going nowhere. I'm not gonna lie. I think the Warriors just keep putting themselves in a deeper hole here. Like it's been 5 years now of them doing this thing where they're like, oh yeah, we gotta keep the youth movement going, but also we're gonna keep Steph and Draymond around and try to keep competing. And it's like, you just look at this trade and you're like, okay, you brought in another star, but like then you're still also like, Pods is untouchable, Kuminga's untouchable. Like, it's just it doesn't move me. I don't think Jimmy Butler's gonna make this team that much better, especially in the regular season. If they get to the playoffs and can get a solid seeding there, maybe he can come in and do some work. But then also the spacing just gets weird, like with Butler and Draymond out there. If they have like a non-shooting 5 out there with them, I mean, it could get nasty on offense. It could, I mean, defense, like they're an older team now still. Like they got the couple young guys, but the guys at the top of the pecking order are definitely older. That's just going to be who's getting the most minutes. So I don't love it. I know the hand was kind of forced. I do think on Jimmy's side, he kind of put a masterclass of tanking his own trade value because – I mean, the fact that he gets to go to the Warriors and really the biggest piece that's outbound is somebody who plays the same position as him. So just kind of getting to slot himself in there, good for him. But I don't really know if the needle's moved a crazy amount for really any team involved here. But, and I do want to say this because I don't know if anybody else will touch on it. I think the biggest loser of this whole situation is Phoenix, specifically because Jimmy wanted to go there so bad that they decided to shop KD and we're like, oh yeah, you might go to the Warriors. So now that just makes their whole situation awkward. They made no deal and they're still mid.
Yeah. Phoenix, terrible deadline, and all that stems from Bradley Beal's no trade clause. Like that is the catalyst for a lot of wrongdoing in the NBA over the last couple of years. But I mean, the Jimmy to Golden State, I guess that's fine. They've been wanting a star for so long. So I guess, look, the worst thing in the world is that they gave this man $60 million a year over the next 2 seasons before he even touched the court. Jimmy's been getting worse. He has been getting worse the last 2 seasons. Like even though he was like tanking his trade value this year, before he was tanking his trade value, he was not playing that good. Like he was not playing that good. There's a reason why they were playing a lot better when he was off the floor. So that's kind of the craziest thing to me. I mean, it does not move like any type of needle for the Warriors. They're still gonna, I think, struggle, because it takes time for people to pick up even the Golden State offense. And like Gabe said, the spacing, it's really at an all-time low for them. I mean, you still have Steph Curry, who's I think is struggling this season because the spacing has been lacking so much. And they can get away with like having multiple non-shooters on the court when they still had Klay Thompson, but Klay Thompson's not there anymore, and they didn't really do a great job of replenishing that. I know Buddy Hield was supposed to be that guy, but Buddy Hield is as streaky as they come when it comes to three-point shooting. So Golden State, I mean, this is their big swing, whatever. I'll be honest, I kind of like Wiggins going to Miami. I kind of like that, move, because Andrew Wiggins, he seems like a Heat guy if he's really locked in, and he's going to do what he does. He's going to get you 16 to 18 points, and he's going to play good defense. Miami could use that. So, that's kind of piece in this trade I kind of like the most was them getting Andrew Wiggins down to Miami. I'm kind of excited to see how he fits in, and I feel like they've been playing better basketball too. Tyler Hero has been great. Bam's gotten better as the season's gone on too. So I think that's kind of the winner of the trade. I mean, they got rid of Jimmy, who didn't want to be there, and you get some quality basketball players in return.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm very intrigued to see how Miami looks now. You got Hero and Bam with Wiggins. Khalil Ware continues to look decent. Davion Mitchell's a sneaky little lad who's going to fit well in Miami, as good as he is defensively. So they do very well from this trade, especially considering the fact, like we mentioned, that Jimmy's trade value just got tanked by the fact that he absolutely obliterated Miami and their front office in the media over the last couple of months. But as far as Golden State goes, obviously they get a higher caliber player, but this gives me very similar vibes to what we just discussed with the Bucks with acquiring Kyle Kuzma. It's, you obviously don't have a top 3 guy in Giannis, but you have your guy who formerly was that, and you're still trying to win with, and Steph Curry, and your team's aging, and you're just trying to do anything to try and salvage the most winning you can while Curry's on the roster. Is that the best thing to do for your organization? Probably not, but it's ultimately the route they're going to go because it's Steph Curry and they're still going to try to remain competitive with him. Jimmy, like we say, he's just not the player he was a year or two ago, and that's likely not going to change in terms of that trend through the next few years that they've now paid him through. Now, can he still give them some on-ball shot creation and tough shot making in a postseason setting? Probably to some extent, and considering how bad Curry's been on the ball this year, they're going to need that because he's still doing his thing off the ball. He's still tough to chase around. He's still a good three-point shooter off the catch. On the ball this year, he's been horrific, and that's not even just for Curry standards. He's been very bad. So they needed someone who could come in and be a bit of a shot creator, but is it going to do much for them ultimately? Probably not. The only blessing here is that at least they gave up their 2025 first and not a first a couple years down the road where they're probably even worse as they continue to age. So at least there's that. But they're just fighting for the play-in, even still with Jimmy. I still don't believe in them much more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's, a similar notion. I see it to like the Kuzma to the Bucks thing, but I would even say it's very comparable to like when the Warriors like years ago like tried to add D'Angelo Russell after they lost Kevin Durant, and it was like just like a last ditch effort because it's like they knew Clay was going to be out, they knew Durant was gone, like just like some sort of last ditch effort to like just put something around Curry, Draymond, and those guys. And it seems like every year, and especially it's been more noticeable since the last time they won in 22. Like it seems like every year they get further and further away from just like the style of play that worked for the Warriors. You know what I mean? Like they just don't have the players for that anymore. And now you like you guys are saying, like you add a guy like Jimmy Butler. It's like you mix that with Draymond and like let's say Kevon Looney's out there, like. It was already like getting harder on Curry like the last few years because like Clay was like not playing the same way. Now it's like you're really surrounding him with like less shooters. Imagine those 3 out there with Curry and like Gary Payton II. Well, game over. Like it's just not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like everyone's just gonna be like focusing so much on Curry. He's probably gonna have so many games where it's like he's just not shooting his best. So like. It puts a lot of pressure on that, and that's why like the Warriors just haven't been playing well. Like I think they were 11th before the trade deadline. Like I feel like they honestly like even with making this move, they might even go down in the seeding. I could see them going to 12th, maybe 13th. The way Portland's been playing, like yeah. So I don't know. But one other thing I will say, and then if you guys have anything else, you can add it as well before we move on. But I do agree. I think the Wiggins to Miami thing is actually good. I feel like the Heat actually really won this trade. I mean, you get like a guy like Wiggins. I feel like maybe Davion Mitchell like as well like could really fit that Heat culture. Like they're really like a 2019 Clippers where it's like they're a team that's pretty good. They could maybe upset a team or take a few games off them in the playoffs. They're gonna play hard, and I feel like they're just gonna have fun like playing again too. It seemed like there was just like a cloud covering the team while this whole Jimmy thing was going on, and I think it's been uplifted now. So I think there's that, and yeah, it seems like the Heat could care less about Jimmy's legacy he left in Miami, because they've already, as soon as they got Wiggins, they just gave him his number. So
Yeah, I didn't know Wiggins took 22, so
yeah.
that's rough. Also, I guess the Pistons also were winners in this trade. Getting any type of, somebody that can command the basketball a little bit, they needed that really bad. So getting Dennis Schroeder out of this was pretty good from Detroit too. But
just glad he has a home.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, the way
is crazy,
bro. The way he was talking was, oh man. I honestly, Detroit might have got a good veteran, because I don't think he's gonna want to go nowhere anytime soon.
Like you said, Reek, someone who can handle the ball other than Cade is a positive. And outside of that, just shout out the Pistons and the Jazz all deadline, kind of getting all these second round picks from all these trades. It might not be anything significant, but they both acquired multiple second round picks by just existing in these trades. So for where they're at, you can't go wrong with that.
Raptors involvement is weird to me too. Like, bro, PJ's been here like 20 years apart.
Yeah,
why are they in
over
this?
3 different decades now? But hey, again, it's same thing for us in that trade. It's like we weren't going to re-sign Davion because Jamal Shedd's been great. I'll take a second round pick for it.
Second round picks are underrated. We've seen players get traded for just like 5 second round picks in the past. So might as well stockpile those if you can.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, you guys were over there kind of talking about Toronto. I think the big deal that you guys made, though, this trade deadline is getting Brandon Ingram, which I feel like kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I know he was kind of on the trade market a little bit, like, loosely, like, earlier in the year, but no one really paid too much attention to it, it seems like, because obviously we were talking about Butler, we were talking about Beal, and then he just ends up, in Toronto for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and a couple of picks. This is a trade for 2 teams that probably won't make the playoffs this year. But what do you think this move does for your guys' Raptors, Devin and Gabe?
I mean, you can't really go wrong considering how low the value was for Ingram in this trade. And that was my biggest concern when that was the rumor initially, was it's either Toronto or Atlanta, it sounded like, for Brandon Ingram. And I was concerned what that asking price was going to be, considering it's players that aren't long-term pieces, not our own pick, and then a second, which we nullified from trading away Davion Mitchell. You can't really go wrong with that. It's essentially a first-round pick and then the vets you were looking at trading this deadline anyways, and it's not your own first-round pick. Now, on the Pelicans front, the fact that you're only getting a first-round pick that's going to be from a team that is likely to be in the playoffs next year in the Pacers, it's not ideal. Now there's talks that they might be looking to keep Bruce Brown around long-term, so maybe there's some value there. But considering that forever it was Brandon Ingram and Zion, that's your duo, and this is your return for half of that duo, it's a little bit disappointing. Now, as far as Toronto goes long-term, it shouldn't spoil the plan too much this year. That is, get a good lottery pick, and then you have your lottery pick, Scotty and BI, and that's your long-term future. Partly because you just traded away Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and Davion Mitchell. So you just traded away 3 of your not key rotational pieces, but valuable bench pieces nonetheless. And Brandon Ingram might not play much this year anyways. Obviously, he's been dealing with his injury for a lot of the season, which is the big concern for Ingram. His availability has been a problem, but if he's sitting on the bench a fair bit the rest of the year, he's still got a few other guys that are dealing with injuries. Given the fact that Brooklyn's the only team super close, it's probably still a top 5 to 6 lottery odds for Toronto. You go in next year, offseason is going to be interesting because now you have, similar to what we had before with Scotty, OG, and Pascal, now you have RJ, Brandon Ingram, and Scotty. So if I'm RJ, I'm thinking my bags are probably getting packed this summer, and if I'm Ujiri, that's what I'd imagine has to start being the plan for the offseason. Having all 3 of those guys doesn't really make sense from a spacing standpoint, from a fit standpoint. It gets a bit ugly, but I think BI is a very good fit for Scotty, even though there was some concerns initially. Ultimately, Scotty's calling cards are, I'm a good playmaker, and I can be a very elite defender when that's what I can dedicate myself to. Right now, he can't, and the offensive struggles are alongside it. BI being able to take a lot of that pressure off is going to help a lot. And I think that, plus their pick this year, Is it elite? That remains to be seen on the development of their pick and Scotty. But at the very least, I think it's a really good core to work with going forward.
I've been very tapped out. I'll be very upfront when like just going into this season, like the Raptors were just so bad. It's almost like it was hard to watch the product. I think the fact that they actually got somebody in who can bring in a little bit of a spark to the offense, like that will just one, I think, make it a more watchable deal overall. I wasn't sure about the timeline, kind of first and foremost, with him being a little bit older than, maybe most of the people on a more rebuilding team. But, even if he's able to pass off some of those just shot creation skills onto some of the other players on the team, just by like working with them at practice or in game or whatever it may be, I think it could help with their development on that end of things. I honestly don't hate it on the Pelican side either. I didn't realize his value was going to be that low, but for what they did get, as far as those front court pieces to put around a Zion, if you're still continuing in that direction, having a stretch five, don't mind that. I think next to Zion, that's something they haven't had full out. If then just having Bruce Brown is just like a very solid wing to have next to him as well. I think maybe the talent level of players slash like maybe some draft equity that you could get for BI was a little low, but as far as the fit, I actually do feel like it might be a solid little deal for them.
I'm kind of wondering on the Pelican side if like they could get into fire sale mode in the offseason. Like I'm gonna keep an eye on that for sure. I feel like Zion, his time is probably a little more limited in New Orleans than we could have expected. I mean, they just have a lot of other tradable guys that I think could still be not super valuable, like a CJ McCollum. Obviously, DeJounte Murray being hurt, tearing his Achilles is like really bad for that. But they have a lot of tradable guys still. Like they could try and set themselves up for a good rebuild if they want to go that direction. And I feel like this trade is kind of like that's the direction that I'm kind of getting from that. But we'll see. But I think for the Raptors, like y'all said, I think they're kind of playing with house money. BI is still a really good player when he's on the court. And if he can be healthy, there's just a lot of options and a lot of different routes that y'all can go. As far as like who you want to keep for the core going forward. And a lot of guys that show promise. I remember like Grady Dick started the season off really good. RJ's had his moments too. Obviously you want to build with Scotty. So I think BI could be a very good complementary piece, and you didn't really give up much to get him, which is like very good. You didn't even give up your own first round pick, so that's really good trade, and I think it sets the Raptors up for something, for some good decision making to be made in the offseason, and for the Pelicans, kind of like maybe a direction turning type of move for them too.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot for me to add that you guys didn't touch on, but I do think like with the Pelican side, I mean, you mentioned like a good point, Reek, where like especially just seeing like a player like Luka Doncic, like the Mavericks traded him, and if you're the Pelicans thinking like, well, Luka did all this and like getting into the playoffs, he got into the finals, he was in MVP conversation like year after year after year, and we have a guy like Zion Williamson who is in his sixth season. He hasn't even played a playoff game because he's usually hurt by that time, or dare I say overweight by that time. And just like it just hasn't worked out. Like I feel like it has to be considered a disappointment at this point. So, I mean, the return they got for Ingram, it's a little underwhelming because of that, because I think they really thought they had like a good core going when they put the two of them together. But just hasn't really worked out. I do think like for the Raptors side, like it's definitely a move you probably had to make, because like you guys were saying, Devin and Gabe, like it's low. It's really like not a huge asking price for him. Having said that, it's going to be interesting to see like what actually happens with the Scotty, Ingram, and RJ Barrett trio there, because it is like a little bit of wing log jam, and I feel like that's part of the thing that you saw in New Orleans. Although I do think with Toronto, maybe there's, a little bit less like spacing players necessarily, more so shot creators. And obviously like Scotty's going to, be there. It's more so, I think, going to come down to, can Ingram and RJ coexist together too? And if not, which one is going to end up getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I'd find it hard to imagine all three are on the roster going into next season, which obviously based on the fact that Scotty is your core guy and you just got BI, that RJ's probably the odd man out, but we'll see how that stands. I mean, there's going to be other questions beyond that with, is Grady Dick going to be a starter, or are you drafting a guy to be a starter? There's going to be some things to figure out, but next year's still going to be a bit of a year for that before you really get Scotty entering his prime, and that starts to get figured out. The only other note I'll make on this, Trey Murphy's development and continued breakout is probably the next biggest winner of this trade, because he's clearly been showing he's ready to be a key piece over there. Not that Brandon Ingram was stopping him from that this year because he hasn't been healthy, but this clearly signifies, at the very least, even if they do trade off Zion, that Trey Murphy is ready to be their guy over there.
He's been killing lately too. So
yeah, he's been going off. But yeah, I mean, so those are kind of like the main trades I wanted to cover. Now I will leave this segment right here to kind of talk about some of the other trades, because obviously like those are all the all-stars, but there are still like other key players that got moved. Like Marcus Smart got traded at the deadline, DeAndre Hunter, Jonas Valanciunas, like you guys were saying earlier. So just in all that, I mean, Bogdanovich from the Hawks. So I guess like what would you guys say are like some of those other moves that I think could be like game changers a little bit? Like, what do you guys think? And would you say that it makes any of them like winners or losers of the deadline, these teams?
DeAndre Hunter is amazing.
Yeah, that's the move right there, I would say too. Like the Cavs need a wing depth really bad, and they got one of the better wings that would have been on the market. And he's had a really good season. He's been a better defender. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, we'll see. But that's a really good ad, and I don't think like giving up KHRIS LeVert in that deal, that's fine. I think that was a really good move by Cleveland.
Yeah. I don't hate them getting rid of LeVert either, especially with how well Ty Jerome's been playing this year. That makes him a little bit more expendable. So they do well here for sure.
I mean, your goal is to beat Boston at the end of the day. Like, not that you want to look past the other teams in the conference, but at the end of the day, if they are as good as they look like they are, I mean, that's kind of your main competition. So being able to bring in such a good wing piece as a defender, and then going against Boston, whose two best players would probably be matched up against a player like DeAndre Hunter, that's definitely a piece that you're going to see be super impactful if that's something we get 7 games of later in the year. So that, great ad. Just as far as fit, and I feel like for ages, that's kind of been their weakest point, was just filling that 3 spot. So having somebody who is maybe more inclined on the defensive end, but still far from like a non-factor on offense is very nice for them to finally add.
Yeah. And I mean, dear God, you can't have Sam Merrill guarding Jason Tatum in the fourth quarter. Like, you just can't have that, bro. So,
no.
I feel a lot more comfortable having DeAndre Hunter out there as far as Sam Merrill. So,
yeah, for sure. The other note I'll make in Atlanta's front, interesting to see that they traded away Hunter and Bogdanovich, both guys they had on contract past this year, but keep Capella, even though he's an expiring, and doing all of this while they don't have their own pick this year. So they're tanking for the Spurs to get a better pick. Now on the Hunter front, I'm not mad at it because this is probably as high as his value is going to get. He's had a pretty good year this year, but it's just an interesting strategy they got going on over there.
Yeah, Clint's up there with Miles Turner, man. Trade deadline legend.
Chris Boucher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the Cavs move is definitely a needed one. The only thing like that came to like my questioning of it is like kind of like the little bit with the Danny Granger in 2014 thing when the Pacers were the 1 seed and they traded him to Philadelphia for Evan Turner, and like even though he wasn't playing, like David West even at that point said like, oh yeah, we're not winning the championship, like in real time. Like it's just crazy because they're the best team in the league. So I mean, like even though a guy like Jorgis Niang has not been good, like we know like he's very liked in that locker room by a lot of those guys. So it's like just hoping that you can bring someone in. And obviously DeAndre Hunter has his history like playing with Ty Jerome, and he apparently has good relationships with Mobley and Garland from what I heard as well. So I don't think that should be an issue. But that's kind of just like the only concern. I do think that the moves the Clippers made were pretty low risk and could be a good reward. Trading guys like Terrence Mann and Bones Highland, it's like these Bones Highland was not even really in the rotation, and Terrence Mann has started to fly like out of the rotation in the recent games and stuff like that. So you get a guy like Bogdanovich who's maybe not having a great year, but I mean, still like he could definitely help them out. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add real quick. Or...
Yeah, losers is all the teams that were in Cam Johnson rumors, and they didn't get Cam Johnson. Like OKC, Indy, they could really use a Cam Johnson, and the fact that it seemed like nothing even heated up as like the trade deadline came to a close towards him was kind of interesting. If OKC could have added a Cam Johnson, that would have been like a really good addition in my opinion. But Brooklyn basically hung on to all the guys that they could have traded, so kind of interesting in my opinion.
Got a Tice instead.
I also think like to an extent, like I don't know, like a part of me feels like Denver is losers too, just because it's like I know they really didn't have much flexibility to do much, but it's like just doesn't seem like they're very sold on this team right here. And of course Jokic is so great that he could pull off pretty much anything, but it just seems like it's going to be so hard. You know what I mean? Especially like just with how many people have been in and out. Like Jamal Murray's been in and out, Aaron Gordon's been in and out. Now Westbrook is out. Like, so I don't know. It just seems like they could have maybe done something. It could have tried a little harder. The only thing I really saw is they made like a last ditch attempt to try and get Chris Boucher.
Windows closing. It's weird to think that most people, if you asked like a year ago, would have said the three best players in the league might be like, I say Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid, and none of them are probably competing for a title this year.
Philly sucks.
Philly that sucks. Paul George trade, when the stat came out that he's posted more podcast clips than made field goals since going to Philly, that kind of tells you everything you need to know.
He's bad. Yeah. He's bad.
Yeah, it's been rough over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but they just got a lot of questions that need to be answered too. We could, though, if you guys want, we could keep it pushing, move on to the last little few segments here. So usually on every show, I do a little honor of the week, and it's about 1 minute. But since there's three of you guys, I'll have a 2-minute like running timer of a player that you guys will talk about. It could be it'll be a former player that you guys are familiar with, and yeah, you could talk about him for good or for bad. You guys will all go in the 2 minutes, so I guess just however you want to go, maybe like roughly 45 seconds per person. So are you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, and I feel like this one's a little fitting because, while I think his birthday is coming up in a couple days, this guy, and I did recently see one of Reek's TikToks that was talking about this guy having one of the most obscure jerseys you will ever find. So the player is Paul Millsap.
Oh.
Big boy Paul.
What's up with this TikTok, Reek?
So I think somebody posted they was going to like a jersey party or something like that. They were like, I hope nobody pulls up with a 2016 Paul Millsap All-Star jersey. I'm like, bro, I'm sure you're fine. I'm sure nobody else has that jersey but you. But now Paul Millsap, man, one of the most underrated power forwards from the 2010s, man. The first thing I always think about when I think about Paul Millsap is I think it was Game 4 against the Celtics, 2016 playoffs. Bro had like 45 points on the road, and we ended up putting like Marcus Smart on him, and he like low-key clamped him up in the last couple of minutes, and we won the game. But for the first 45 minutes of that game, he was unstoppable. Looked like LeBron reincarnated. Paul Millsap was that guy. Like he was low-key like the Hawks' best player from those teams. Like when you look back at those squads that had, they had the 4 All-Stars, Garrett's guy, Jeff Teague.
No.
Al Horford was so sound, but Paul Millsap was like their guy. And, he still had some good stops even after he left Atlanta. But Paul Millsap, man, low-key elite hooper from the early 2010s, and
Yeah.
he just retired. I think
Yep.
was it last season or
Earlier
going into
this season, I think he made it official.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
shout out Paul Millsap, man.
Mr. Consistency right there with them Hawks teams. What they made the playoffs, 10 years in a row? They were just, never got the job done. But I don't know. I feel like he was just a really good floor raiser. He was out there with just the upcoming Nuggets. I feel like he was off the team by the time they got the ring, but still, and telling their story from that rise with Jokic, taking a second round pick, kind of being mediocre, all the way up to contenders. I feel like he was a big part of that development. So definitely can't tell the story of the best player in the league right now without him.
No, definitely. Consistency is a great word for Millsap. He's truly an upper tier of guys who's in the Hall of Very Good. Probably not quite at that Hall of Fame level, but definitely a true Hall of Very Good type guy. Very good career for Paul.
Yeah.
Some people might not remember his Utah days too, when it was him, Al Jefferson.
Yeah,
I think
young Gordon Hayward for a little bit.
Yeah. That was a nice little squad that they had. I think 2012 was their best season that they had. Decent little team right there for sure.
Yeah, he was a part of some solid teams. I feel like he's one of those all-star type of players who was definitely good enough to lead a team. Obviously, maybe not lead it to a championship team, but he could definitely lead a playoff team. And you saw that in Atlanta. You saw that a little bit with Utah, and really being a veteran the back half of his career. Once he went to Denver and stuff, probably even though his role was a little diminished, I think he definitely had a big part in their bubble run where they made the conference finals and stuff like that. And that was their first kind of breakthrough kind of. So I don't know. I think he was a solid player. Most people, recognize him, I say, for the 4 All-Star team. I feel like it makes sense to talk about him because we have 4 All-Star podcasters right here. Yeah. Now, obviously, one of them has to be an imposter because we know who didn't deserve to be an All-Star that year. But
Kyle Korver, yeah, for sure.
Agree to disagree. But do you guys have anything else you want to add on Paul Millsap?
I really, man. Shout out Paul Millsap, though. I'll have to try and get that 2016 All-Star jersey.
Yes, I think we should have a competition. Whoever can get it first, so the 4 of us.
I'm getting a Jeff Teague jersey, man. And I'm actually gonna drive all the way to Garrett's hometown just to wear that to his house.
And I'll come outside with a lighter. But anyways, and while you mention Jeff Teague, why don't we talk about a guy who had his playoff career high on his head, Derrick Rose, and the Rose Gold Trivia Minigame right here to close it out.
What a segue!
What a transition, man!
Thank you. Also, it could have said the guy who rode the bench when he had his career high, because that is true as well. But how this is going to work, the Rose Gold Trivia Minigame, there's going to be 5 questions. They're all Derrick Rose related to some extent. Now, I feel like the first one should be relatively easy. The last one will be kind of harder, although I do think you guys can actually get this one. Questions 2 through 4 might be a little bit tricky, but you can get partial credit depending on how close you are. The max total for each question is 10 points, so you can end with 50 out of 50 if you get a perfect score. I believe the highest right now is 43. So we'll see if any of you guys can top that or get that. But like I said, the first and last question you have to be exactly right on. And you guys can do the same answers. Although if you're I don't trust you, then you can go somewhere else. You can take a different answer. It's entirely up to you guys. But are you guys ready?
Let's go.
I think so.
All right. So I feel like the first one should be not too difficult, especially because as I was just talking about with one of D Rose's big games there, this team was involved too. But in the theme of the trade deadline, what team traded for D Rose at the 2018 NBA trade deadline before waiving him?
I'm pretty sure it's the Utah
Yeah.
That
Utah.
sounds about right.
You guys all going to go with the Utah Jazz?
Traded from the Cavs when he lost his love for the game.
Might have been the Rodney Hood trade, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
What a
And
name.
You guys are all correct.
Obviously.
It is the Utah Jazz. So just like that, easy 10 points right there. That should have been pretty easy because, I mean, we all know he dropped 50 on him next time he saw him. So, but yeah, and it was that trade. It would involve like Jay Crowder and stuff like that too. And so, yeah. So good start for you guys. You guys all got 10 points. We'll see if anything changes up here. I do think this one, you guys, it's possible some of you guys might get it right on the dot. Right on the dot. So we'll see. So question number 2, what season did Derrick Rose miss the entire season as an active player?
That would have been 2012, 2013.
Is that what you're rolling with, Tariq?
That's what I'm going with.
What are you guys rolling with?
Yeah, because that was like when he got big injury in the 2012 playoffs, so it makes the most sense that would be just timeline-wise, like when he would have missed a whole year. Plus, I don't know how the calendar was looking, too, with the lockout year around then, because he got injured in the lockout year, but...
Yeah, I'm trying to think. For some reason, I feel like there's a different year in there, but I can't think of what year that would be, so I might have to lock in the same.
Could have been one of those Butler years, man. I don't know.
What are you thinking, Gabe?
Just because the big injury was in the playoffs, I feel like it makes the most sense to go 12-13.
So you locking that in then? Okay. So actually, you guys are all right. It was 2012, 2013. Yeah. So good start. You guys got the first 2. Now I will tell you, like, next 3 are going to be a little bit more difficult. You're not going to easily know it, I would say. So we'll see. So you guys right now got 20 points. All you guys. Answers might be different on this one. We'll see how it goes. So number 3, how many dunks did Derrick Rose have after leaving the Chicago Bulls?
I know it's not a lot.
And for every one you are off, you will be subtracted a point. If you're more than 10 away from whatever the answer is, you just won't get any points. But it also could be lower than 10. But also
I think the last time he dunked in the game was like 2018 after he got traded and waived. I think that was the last time he dunked in the game.
You know what I'm gonna say, Garrett?
How many?
My answer is 8.
Going 8.
I'm feeling a 9. I think 9 is what I'm going with.
7 rolling with 9. What are you thinking, Reek?
Man, I'm trying to think because he started a little bit of juice after the Knicks the first time. I'm gonna go 15. I'm gonna go 15.
Going 15.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Reek, you got 7 points. Devin got 7 points. Gabe, you got 6. It was 12 dunks.
Okay.
I was gonna go 10. Okay. Okay. I'll take that.
So, yeah.
Overall, I don't hate that result. It could have been. I thought it might have been 0. I was going a little safe. I'm like, let me get something.
Now I remember he had one when he signed with the Timberwolves because they were like, my God, this is the first time Derrick Rose has dunked in like 2 years. It's like, damn.
He had a lot, actually, the season after he got traded from the Bulls. Because the last couple seasons with the Bulls, I think he only had like 3 or 4 in each of those 2 seasons. And then he had like 8 his first time in New York because it was like I'm back type of mindset. His last time he dunked was in 2019-2020, actually with the Pistons against my Bulls. So in the United Center was his last dunk in the NBA. So fitting.
It's probably just like
It was. He like split a double team and he kind of just like dropped it in, but hey, it does technically count as a dunk. So we'll see so right now you guys are doing pretty well. I believe Reek and Devin have 27. Gabe, you have 26. Top spot is in play for all you guys right now. So we'll see how it goes. So the fourth one, how many total points did D Rose score across his All-Star games that he played in?
Oh, man.
2010, 11, 12. So 3 times. Ooh, it's a tough one.
This is a tough
This is a
one.
tough one.
That's a tough one.
He had some good games in there.
I'm gonna go. I don't think he had like any like great like a 4-point game or something like that.
I like how you specifically like 24. Like not like 23, 25.
Yeah. I'm gonna go like 35. I think that's a safe number. I'm gonna go 35.
You're gonna roll with 35 points.
35.
Okay.
I feel like for some reason there's a little bit more scoring in there. Not a lot, but I'm going to go with 42. 42.
Well, let's see. Give me 40. Let me go in the middle. Hedge my bet.
Okay. So we're locking in Devin 42, Reek 35, Gabe 40.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So Devin, you got 1 point for this one.
It's not 0.
It's
Take
not
it.
0. There's still points. Gabe, you got 3 points for this one. Reek got
That means Reek is
8.
close. Yeah.
It was 33 points.
Let's go.
Wow. That was a good one right there. Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty good. He averaged 11 over his 3 All-Star games he played and never went too crazy, but I think his best one was I think it was actually 2012. Which
That's surprising.
yeah, which was the last one he was in. So right now I believe for the scores we have Gabe with 29, Devin with 28, and we have Reek with 35. Okay. So you guys can all still get really high scores here, but Reek, the top spot is still in play for you if you get this last one correct. So there's only one answer allowed. It's all or nothing. But I will say I do think it's possible you guys could get this. There's only one answer for it. Are you guys ready?
All right.
Do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, as you guys know, Derrick Rose is the youngest MVP in NBA history at 22 years and about 6 months old. Who's the oldest?
The oldest MVP?
The oldest MVP. What are we thinking? There's a few. I feel like there's not really too many candidates, but could be a little tricky with some.
All right, gents. Let's do some discussion here. I think one of the earlier contenders, maybe like a Karl Malone. I feel like he was close to like
First
throw that up there too. Yeah.
he was
First
close to
guy.
like he was like year 15 or something winning the MVP. Even
I think he was a
like-
4-year guy too. So he would have been like 36, 37 at that time.
so. I mean that's a high contender right there because I mean Shaq was in like year 8 in 2000. Kobe I think was year 12. So I mean and he came from high school, so
He
still not
started
as far
younger.
on.
Yeah.
Like LeBron's last one was like year 9.
He was even 30.
Yeah. LeBron won't be in there. MJ's last one.
Like 96 or 7.
Close.
But MJ's last
But I
one
don't
was
think it
before
was-
Karl Malone, though. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think Carlos might still be older.
I think it is Karl Malone. That's
If it's like some '60s basketball, like even still, Bill Russell played like
I don't
13
think any
years.
of those guys were getting them late enough.
Yeah.
I don't think Bill was getting it late enough. I don't think Wilt got any late enough.
Did Kareem get any late? Nah, later part of his career was a Magic.
I will say, and it could very well be one of these guys, but it might be neither. Michael Jordan came in 1 year before Karl Malone, and then Karl Malone won the last year after Michael Jordan's last. So they both won their last MVP in their 14th season.
MJ was a 3-year college guy though, so we gotta get that in mind.
Yeah.
He's like 35 when he won his last one. I
I
think
hate to give Carl
Carl's
Malone
probably
credit for anything.
I think it's
'cause
probably him.
It's nobody recent.
I don't think Kareem
No.
won a late one.
No.
It's only one answer. You guys don't have to go with the same answer too, but
I'm locking in Karl Malone. That's
Carl makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna lock him in too.
you guys all gonna lock in Karl Malone. Final answer.
Yeah. If it's somebody pre 80s, I will live with that. I'll be honest.
They didn't even play long enough to hit year 15 half the time. They're like,
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like we're all locking in Karl Malone.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing you guys did because that is the
Come
correct
on!
answer.
Oh,
Wow. And that is huge as well because I'm pretty sure that puts, well, first of all, that puts Reek as the #1 spot on the leaderboard. And I'm pretty sure between Devin and Gabe, I think you guys are 3rd and 4th as well. So, wow.
I'd love to see it.
come on, man. Who knows ball better? 3 of the top 4? It's just like every tournament this guy runs. Go to the semis. There's some
You
representation.
can check the Riddle Tales. It's all in there. But yeah.
I was scared. The question was gonna be who was the youngest before Derrick Rose won.
Would you know that? Because actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I was
I'm not
thinking about
sure.
making that the question. If you had to
I'm not
guess,
sure.
who do you think that would be?
That
though?
one.
If I had to guess,
I want to say Bill
I would-
Walton for some reason. I don't know why. Like that's
I'll-
the first guy I thought of.
I would guess Wes Unseld.
Okay, Gabe got it. Yeah, that's
Good
Come
shit.
on!
Good shit.
Yeah, like I feel like that
He was
would
a rookie, yeah.
also been a little easy though, just because he was won it as a rookie, you know. But also Wilt did.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Damn, I forgot about Wes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I mean, just off point tallies, Reek, you end up with 45 points, only the second person to cross the 40-point barrier. Gabe, you end with 39, and Devin, you end with 38. So you guys all really cooked right here. How do you guys feel?
Teamwork makes the dream work, man. 3 heads are better than 1.
Just another day at the office.
For real.
Yeah. Well, must have been. Yeah, you guys definitely put the teamwork together. You know, I thought maybe like once I said Reek had the most points, I thought maybe like Devin or Gabe would try to like, sabotage and be like, let him answer first so we can get the top score of 3-Point Weekly. But you guys, you put it all together. It's good.
Hey, one of us up top. I'm good with that.
Hey. We lift each other up around here, man. No toxicity.
Come on now.
And to be honest, if Reek had like missed it, and then you guys went like a different route too or something like to follow suit, you guys all might have been lower. So it's one way to look at it. So it's a good play, and as a result, solid scores, solid showing. But yeah, appreciate you guys once again being on the show. I think it was a fun one. I'm glad we talked about a lot of the big trades. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You got anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
Las Vegas Mavericks 2028.
You heard it here first.
Man.
Hopefully with a new GM.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know
Please
the
be
way that they're
God.
storming after Nico Harrison right now. I mean, bro had to hire a whole security team. So, yeah.
No comment.
Okay. Yeah, I think, like I said, it was a good show. Glad we could collab on this one. You check out the description. I'll have all their stuff down below. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.